welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia. I am a content creator. I am also the host of the show. I'm also a stripper, and I am also a former sugar baby. I have done a lot of things in regards to sex work, and that also includes some really cool lectures and talks. So I recorded with Alicia Armstrong. I should say Professor Alicia Armstrong. She is one of the adjunct professors at Florida State University in Human Sexuality, and I have had the opportunity to guest lecture in a few of her Human Sexuality classes, including last month, just here in June, talking about the shifting landscape of sex work. And I was really excited because each class is totally different. I cater the talk to what the students send in and stuff. And this was a really fun and engaging class. And it's just a bonus episode this week while I source some new guests and also I took a little bit of a break for the summer just so I could have a life as well. I've been doing this for 2 years nonstop. And yeah, I really hope that you all enjoy the talk. It was a tight 1 hour chat because I was able to speak to the class at the very end of class. I was like, I don't want to go over. So listen in to this bonus episode of my guest lecture talk at Florida State University. Enjoy.
Steph Sia has joined us. She is our fabulous guest speaker today. Are you on, Steph? Hi.
I am. Hi.
There you are.
It's great. So good to see you again.
Yeah, welcome. I will let you, we've talked as a class, they were prepared that you were coming to speak, and I know I sent you some questions that the group had, and I'm sure there might be more that come up. Class goes till 12:55 our time, so just a little over an hour. So we'll get through as much as we can. Sometimes you have a PowerPoint, sometimes you don't. What did you do today, Steph?
Yeah, I did bring a PowerPoint today. So if you wanted,
do you want to do that?
Sure, yeah. If I could screen share, that'd be awesome. It's just to keep me on track because I know with the time and everything.
I get that. Let me. You should now be able to share your screen.
Okay,
check.
Perfect. Let me just give this a try.
And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Let me screen share. You know, it's really funny because, maybe I can't. I have to change my preferences.
Oh, no.
If not, then I can always just do it on my end. I mean, the PowerPoint is just complimentary. It's not it's not super mandatory, but yeah. Let me see here. Oh, share screen. Okay, well, just give it on time. I'm just going to go ahead and just do it on my own here. So I guess, yeah, if that's okay. If that's okay with you.
And if you want to email it to me, I can send it to the group later if it's something that you think is worth doing that. But if it's mostly to keep you on track, then we don't have to do that.
It's just a talking point, so.
Cool, okay. All right, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for having me this morning. It is morning, and it's so funny because I was trying to avoid getting up really early, and then I had to get up really early to do another contract in sex work at 6 a.m. this morning. So yeah, I'm awake, but I don't feel like I'm super awake, but I'm gonna just bear with me as I do this talk. So I guess, who am I? I am Steph Sia. I am a digital content creator. I'm also a stripper. I'm also was a former sugar baby, and I am also the host of the Stripped by Sia podcast, which is a podcast that tells the true lived experiences of sex workers in order to help destigmatize the work, because I'm sure I was just listening in really briefly to your class when I popped in 5 minutes ago. there is a lot of stigma that comes with the work that we do as sex workers, and I think it's really important to share the lived experiences of like what it is that we do, instead of other people telling our story and kind of, trying to share the narrative that they think that they may know, but usually it's wrong. So so that's what I do every single Sunday. Feel free to take a listen if you'd like. There's tons of various subjects on there, from consent, from harder subjects such as sexual assault, to lots of different policies from around the world. I'm based here in Canada, but there is a lot of listeners that are actually American. That number keeps going up, actually. So that's really, really exciting. And it's something I really enjoy doing. I've been doing that for the past 2 years almost. And it's just my little passion project, which seems to be getting bigger and bigger. And I really enjoy just connecting with other sex workers and other non-sex workers, like civilians such as yourselves, who want to know more about the work that we do, and to gain a better understanding, to gain a bit more empathy. So that's just a little bit of background about who I am. I guess to go more into detail, why I started it, well, someone told me at the club, stripper culture is really interesting or really fascinating or something along those lines. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And this person was like, oh, well, a lot of you have like large followings. A lot of you have different stories. A lot of you are really well educated. And it was just a really nice, refreshing take, because stereotypically what you might hear, like, sex workers are not educated. When are you going to get a real job? A lot of us are suffering from substance abuse, or we're all alcoholics, and that our work is easy, or can be seen as easy money, which I don't necessarily agree with. It's a lot of true, legitimate work. So I thought that was an interesting statement, and it just kind of like, made like a light bulb go up in my head, and I was like, this is kind of interesting. I think I can really dive deeper into what this person has said. And obviously the person has had no real experience in the sex work industry at all, except being a client, which is also really valid too, but had only that lens. And I was like, if this one person is thinking like that, then I'm sure a lot of other people may have, or may share the same kind of sentiments. So that kind of helped embark me on my journey to uncover more stories and just connect with more sex workers and like get the real stories out there and learn and uncover what issues we're going through. Initially just starting here in Vancouver, Canada, then branching off into my connections in the States, and then through Asia, Europe, and now it's just kind of going all over the place because sex work is a global thing. So that's kind of where I got started with that, and the whole notion that sex work is work. I think one of your students mentioned earlier, it's not seen as something that is legitimized at all. And a big aim for the podcast is to help gain a better understanding of, it is real work. It's something that, a lot of people really like and enjoy doing, and I think it's really important to show that side. And I have really enjoyed doing the podcast for the past couple of years. I just seem to keep going and just rolling with the momentum. So it's not your homework, but you're more than welcome to take a listen to it later on if you'd like. So a lot of people are usually really interested in terms of like, well, how did I get started into sex work? What was my introduction? Was it something you always wanted to do? Because I also hear that even talking with my guests. I've always wanted to become a stripper. I've always wanted to do this. I have exhibitionist tendencies, and this is just like the perfect job for me. Or, I tried doing corporate jobs. It just isn't for me. Or maybe they have a disability, and sex work is like a more a better suited job for them. So there's so many different reasons why people get into sex work, and obviously money. The money is pretty lucrative. It's great. But my personal entry into sex work was when I was living with a roommate a long time ago, and I had just come out of this really, really big, devastating breakup, and it was my first kind of big breakup in my life, so a bit traumatic for myself to be like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, I don't know who I am, I can't value myself, and all these things going through my head. And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna start dating as you would after a big breakup. I just gotta get back to my zone again. And my roommate suggested, well, why don't you try this thing called Seeking Arrangement, which I'm sure many of you may or may not have heard of. It is a very popular website that matches affluential, usually typically men, with much younger, typically students, and you both will negotiate on mutually beneficial agreement, and that person would be your sugar daddy and they would be my sugar baby. So that was kind of my introduction, and I didn't really understand what that meant. I did not understand that sugaring was sex work. I just thought, I'm gonna get paid to have dinner with this person. But I didn't really understand the full scope of, like, there's going to be expectations there. And I learned that really quickly that, I might have to have sex with this person. And that was, maybe I was just really naive. It's just not something that ever came to my mind when I was thinking about it. I just thought money, fast money. That's what I thought, because that's what society told me. Easy money, this is going to be great. Okay, cool. But then quickly learning that sex is involved was a really big awakening for me, but also something that I enjoyed because I thought, well, the money's really good, and this enables me to do a lot of things that I personally would not be able to do with that type of money, like buy a place or like go traveling to these far off destinations and whatnot, or whatever you want to spend your money on. Really isn't. It's not up to me. Everyone has their own preferences and priorities of where they want to put their money, but that was kind of my first entry into it, and I made them looking back now, I just think, I've made a lot of mistakes. Looking back, oh my God, not knowing what my worth was, not knowing how to price, and also just general screening and stuff like that, which we'll get more into later in terms of boundaries and screening and security, because there are a lot of questions on that later, which I will. Thank you for everyone, by the way, who submitted questions. I will be answering all of them today at some point in the presentation. Also leaving room at the end of the presentation, hopefully, if we have time, for additional questions. So that was kind of my first phase into sex work. And again, not knowing that that was sex work, I just thought, okay, I'm a paid companion, and I get to go on these fancy dinner dates and trips with these affluential men. And then I started stripping a few years after that. I started phasing out sugar babying because I didn't really want to do it anymore, and those reasons being because I want to find a relationship, and I want to start adulting at the ripe age of 28 or however old I was at that time, and started stripping, and that was honestly a lot of fun, and that's something I still do. Clubs have just reopened here in Canada, which has been really exciting, and that to me was a little bit more seamless because I had already been dancing in more of a hobbyist fashion. So I started taking pole dancing lessons, and then 6 months later I started, dabbling in amateur nights. And amateur nights are, you usually go to a club, you compete with other amateurs as well. You get full nude, and then you win a big prize, aka a lot of money, and or possibly a position to work at the club or work with the agency. So that's what happened in my kind of introduction to stripping. I cannot speak this morning. My apologies. And that to me was safer. And what I mean by safer was that, well, I'm not having to engage in these in-person sessions. And oh gosh, oh no, what happened? Connection's lost.
Recording in progress.
Hello. Hello again.
There we are.
I think it just broke down to me, what's going on here? Apologies, I'm not sure what happened there. Was that for everyone? Okay. I was like, that me? But it was safer because, like, in my own mind, I had this stigma that I carried over, and I didn't want to do in-person work because, to me, in-person work at that time was, like, lower and it was dirtier than stripping. Stripping, I didn't have to do that. I'm just dancing on stage, or I'm dancing on people doing lap dances, and I'm not engaging in full service, like, contact in that kind of way. So that, to me, was a lot different, and we'll go into what that means. Like, that's called the hierarchy, and there's different levels. Things like camming and stuff are seen as safer, or maybe on top of the pyramid scale, which I'll go into a little bit later in the conversation today. So again, having the stigma in the back of my mind, and I didn't understand what that was either, but those attitudes were something that I had maybe grew up with since childbirth, possibly. With my background, well, one, being Asian, two, growing up in a strict, like, Roman Catholic family, and then normal society saying sex work bad, stripping bad, and anything to do with, honestly, femininity equals bad. So those kind of notions in my mind, it just deemed that, like, this work is not acceptable. And I was moonlighting for, like, a long time because I had an office job the entire time I was stripping. I mean, to this day as well. And that was really revealing. And then again, it wasn't until that time at the club when someone told me, like, oh, well, this world is really interesting, which really caused me to kind of reflect and dive deeper on why I'm feeling this way. And it's taken me a long time to get there, but in order to, like, change my attitudes towards different types of sex work, because there are a lot of different types of sex work. And judging from some of the questions that came in, I feel maybe people have different definitions of what sex work is or what sex work would entail. I would love to invite the audience to just, like, answer and give your own definition of what sex work is. You could plug that into the chat, and we can kind of go over it later if you want to. But yeah, so that was kind of my foray into stripping, and then I got into digital content creation. So, I mean, with the pandemic, obviously a lot of people have been jumping onto OnlyFans or any kind of video sites or fan sites. I had done that pretty much like a year prior to the pandemic, but then I was able to really ramp it up during COVID because, well, with all the clubs being shut down and, in-person venues, like, not being able to operate anymore for, like, an X amount of time, and I didn't know when it was going to open again. I had to do something in order to make some extra money. So that's kind of where I am right now, and that's kind of like my foray into different types of sex work and lots of dabbling and trying things out. I mean, as you would with any job, you gotta, try a few different jobs, maybe a couple different industries. If you're not as possibly, like, focused, or you don't really know what you want to do, it's the same kind of thing. Again, sex work, it's a job, it's work, very similar. So, did anyone, also, if anyone has any questions at all, feel free to pop it in, and I could always just address them at the end of class today. But I wanted to talk a bit more about language, and I'm curious, like, if anyone wants to pop in and write what you think sex work is, maybe different types of sex work. I'd love to just possibly read out a couple. I just want to understand, like, what your attitudes towards sex work is. So if anyone wants to plop them into the chat, I will give you a minute or maybe less because I know that we're on a time crunch today. So just because at this point, there's just so many different, like, language is really important. And I was saying earlier, there are so many different, are we freezing? No. Okay. I was like, is everything okay?
Well, you're not for me, but I'm not sure.
For anyone else?
It was when you stepped away.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't step away.
Yeah, Albert had something at 12:05. That was just a minute ago. Was she freezing for you, Albert?
Yeah, that was a while back.
Oh, it's maybe my time is wrong on the chat, but it says 12:05, 12:06. Okay, all right, doesn't matter. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're all good.
Oh, but y'all should know what the definition of sex work is. Come on, get your books out. Look at the PowerPoint.
Yeah, look at the PowerPoint.
Type it in there. Let's go.
Type it in, or if anyone wants to shout it out, I'm also okay with that too.
And if my definition or the textbook definition doesn't match what we talk about in here, that's cool too. That's the purpose of this.
Okay, so sex work. Sex positive term that encompasses the various forms of sexual professions, burlesque, strip club dancing, nude photography, internet sex, actor, actresses in erotic films, escorts, erotic massage, and sexual intercourse.
So many.
Trade of sex-related actions for material resources, transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two definitions.
Those are
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, those are excellent. Does anyone else want to? Yes, oldest profession known to man, 100%. Humankind. I like the gender inclusive language there. Thank you for that. I was just gonna say, I'm like, we're on the same page. Those are great definitions, and honestly, I probably wouldn't change any of that. That was perfect. Alicia, did you type that up? That's awesome.
I did, but I think I probably typed it from the textbook.
That's okay.
I'll take credit.
That's great. I like to read this textbook.
Yeah, I will. I can mail you a copy of it. How about that?
Please send. That would be awesome.
I will.
So, no, that's really great. Yeah, like my definition is like a type of sexualized service in exchange for monetary value, affluence, status, or power. Yeah, like that can mean so many things because, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't always have to be for monetary value. Like, for example, when I was sugaring, it could be to gain access to some of my sugar daddy's connections to help me with my business. It could also be, we call them splendid daddies, but like instead of money, you could also do like in kind in terms of like vacations or, people like gifts, my Amazon wish list, people like shopping sprees too, or paying off your rent and stuff like that. So there's so many different kinds of exchanges that can go within sex work. So, and I also like that definition, the textbook definition of like the different types, because there are so many different types of sex work, and I think it nailed a lot of it. But again, sex work is always constantly evolving as well. So I don't think we really have time right now to list every single type of sex work out, but the textbook did a great definition of defining just some of those examples there. But in terms of what I was saying earlier with the hierarchy, and I probably will send you at least this graphic maybe later on today or the presentation if you want to send it to your students, because I think this one graphic is really interesting, or you could quickly Google hierarchy. It's basically a pyramid, and the top of the pyramid you can probably see, non-contact type of sex work like camming, and it goes just down to the more full service types of sex work. So for example, this particular pyramid had cam girls at the top, and then it would go down to strippers and sugar babies, dominatrixes, indoor prostitutes, and then street level prostitutes. So it's really sad because there's still a lot of hierarchy within sex work, and I mean, you'd think that we would all be united on the same issues, but we're not. And it's really sad because sometimes people still have these competing attitudes with the type of sex work that we do. So, and that's definitely one of the issues that we have within our own community, and I'm sure every marginalized community might have something like that too. Like, for example, another example, I'm Filipino, and in the Philippines we have like papaya soap, which is like a whitening soap, and like the lighter skinned you are, like the better you'll be treated. The darker skinned you are means you're lower class, and that this can be, I mean, it's colorism in really simple terms, but this can also be applied to different types of races too. So when you have these intersectionalities within sex work, it can create like even more animosity when there really doesn't need to be. And this is something I really want to bring up too, because just because we are a community doesn't always mean that we are united, and we always have our own inner issues that we're working on as well, in addition to all the other fighting that we have to do against society. So it can be really, really exhausting and really tiring. So I really, really want to bring that up because I don't think it's something that may come up in, say, like a normal class like this. I mean, it's a really common topic amongst sex workers, but maybe not amongst civilians such as yourself. So I just want to bring light to that. So I guess we can kind of go into safety, security, and screening, just because there are a few questions that came into that. So I think it's really important, and I'll just start off this branch of communication here, in terms of setting your boundaries. And that might look a little different in different forms of sex work. So what I mean by setting your boundaries, not just like what you do, what services you offer, or what's on your menu, but it's also like things like using a stage name or an alias. You can also do, if you're a cam model, or if you have an OnlyFans, removing all EXIF data from your pictures and videos, like things that can locate you or like reveal your location. Another thing, like on your iPhone, you could turn off your location settings from your phone so people won't try to stalk you, because that's also happened. That's another thing that can also happen to us in our community. If you do any kind of full service in-person work, conducting a background check if you have the access to that. Also, this sounds really silly, but having your clients follow simple instructions. So for example, if you're an escort, there's usually on the website, like, please give me your name, your phone number, like a picture or photo of your driver's license, or whatever it is, because everyone's checklist is a little bit different in terms of screening. But you'd be surprised that a lot of people just can't follow simple directions. And they understand, like they might not understand, like from the client side, like we are taking security and safety measures to protect ourselves, to protect our identity, to protect our locations where we are. Those questions may seem to be inconvenient for some people, but again, if you're taking these steps, then it's more likely that they will probably get back to you. And if you don't follow those instructions, then you won't get responded to. So just wanted to like bring that up a little bit as well. And and also in addition to setting your own boundaries, it's also, you have to know what your boundaries are as well. So again, like when I first started sugaring, I didn't have any boundaries. I just thought everything, it was like on the table. And you don't have to cater to every single client. If there's things that you don't feel comfortable doing, no one says that you have to do it. There are plenty of fish in the sea. There are plenty of clients. And, a lot of us, I mean, for myself, I can be very niche with what I'm offering, because like, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. There's going to be someone else that offers X, Y, and Z and ABC and everything. So sometimes I feel when I'm speaking with people that are new to sex work, they might feel a bit of pressure to want to offer everything. But again, knowing your own personal values, knowing your own personal boundaries is really, really important. And unfortunately, sometimes that just comes with time and experience as well. So, I see a question here. Yes, I will definitely answer some questions at the end. But there were actually a few questions. I'll just read them out here. in regards to this topic too, so because it's related, but before providing any type of service, what would be important for a potential client to know or to ask questions about? Again, like services I don't offer. It might seem harmless as a client to ask about services I don't offer, but again, going along by following those simple directions, if it's not listed out, and hopefully, again, as a sex worker, you should be listing out what it is you have, and just being super clear on what it is you do offer and what you don't offer, just to really avoid any confusion, any kind of chance or opportunity that a person can make assumptions or for you to take advantage of, because those can turn into potentially dangerous situations as well. So I don't usually entertain those type of requests, or I just say, I'm sorry, I don't offer that, or please refer to my link here that has everything there. So I just don't really entertain those kind of ideas. I would also say, going over each of your boundaries. So also as a client too, if I'm a service provider, I also want to know what your boundaries are too, so I'm not overstepping. It definitely goes both ways, and it's also good to know that as well. And also depends on the type of work that's being offered, the type of sex work as well. I don't really offer a lot of in-person sessions anymore, but hygiene is a big thing. Believe it or not, hygiene is a really great thing. It might seem like silly to say that, but there's a reason why, most in-calls have showers, and we ask you to take a shower beforehand. So we can also enjoy the experience, because again, we choose to do this type of profession, and we want to ensure that everyone's clean, but also it smells great. Might seem silly, but yeah, these are big things that we talk about in my podcast, just what I can think of silly things sometimes. So that was one of the questions. How do you handle situations that may be a risk in the sense of your personal safety or the safety of others? And I thought that was a really great question. Again, personal safety, I don't F with. I'm already at risk of, doing this type of work, and I don't want to further target myself or potentially expose myself to any more risk, especially when it could be like something that can be like physically, like physical harm. I think that's really dangerous, and there are, because of the work and because of the nature of the work that we do, it is very, it's very intimate and vulnerable, and we are subjected to, we are a lot more targeted with our work, and there are a lot of missing and murdered sex workers. I also wanted to bring that up. So especially when they are of indigenous or like BIPOC, queer, trans, they're even more so targeted too. So it's important that we have these types of screenings, and for our screenings to be taken really seriously. So I don't want to bring it down, but it's unfortunately a fact that if you ever Google the missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada, there was a huge report on that. Again, and I'm sure numbers are still being added to that as well, but we are an endangered community. We're an endangered, marginalized group. So just wanted to bring some attention to that as well. So safety is really, really key. And again, it's something that I don't really mess around with. And when it comes to the safety of others, again, it just comes down to clear communication, knowing what each other's boundaries are, maybe having, depending on the type of work that you do, having a safe word or some kind of phrase or something that you can use once your boundaries, it starts to get a bit too close to that. It's good to have those safety precautions in place. So hopefully that answered that person's questions. And I'm so sorry, it is so bright over here. The sun is now shining on me and giving me a nice tan on my back. I guess we can go more into, the laws, different types of legislation. There was a question around this as well. And in terms of like similarities and differences between sex work in Canada and sex work in the USA. Honestly, there's a lot of similarities. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yes. And then thank you, Dylan, for that. And also the children that were found, the bodies of the children that were found recently is deplorable. But that's another topic, but also equally like traumatic to the group of people. So thank you for sharing. But yeah, there are a lot of similarities, I guess, in between in the Canadian and North American context. I feel a lot of similarities. I would say maybe the main differences, at least in terms of strip clubs, we don't really have champagne rooms here. We don't have, at least where I am in Vancouver, we don't have that. We also don't have really crazy drop-in fees because usually if you're VIPing, and I don't really VIP that much, or giving private lap dances, the later you come at the club, the higher your drop-in fee is going to be. If you come earlier, it's going to be less. I find here in Vancouver, it's just the same flat fee, which is nice. Champagne room is a room usually actually found, I would say some places in the USA, but definitely more popular in Europe. It's a place where you can get private dances and usually buy champagne, and then you are expected to drink it with your clients as well. So, but I find that that's a more popular model in Europe. So, but yeah, so if you have more questions, I'll definitely answer more at the end. But that was on topic. So, but yeah, there are similar laws, I guess, that bar sex workers from operating. We have a law here, it's an anti-prostitution law called Bill C-36, which is the Protection of the Communities and Exploited Persons Act, and it is problematic in many ways. And I can't remember who was speaking earlier, but they were making a comment about how tricky it was to kind of digest the information in terms of surrounding the laws and legislation around sex work. And I feel like they purposely make it really difficult or confusing to understand. Because if you ever read through, say, Bill C-36 or even some of the American legislation too, it's not clear cut. And it has I feel like, again, I think they just do that on purpose to confuse us. But the one in Canada, the anti-prostitution laws, I think the purchase of sex is legal, but everything else surrounding it is not legal. So, for example, they make it really difficult for sex workers to, especially in regards to prostitution or kind of full service sex work, they make it difficult for you to advertise. They make it difficult for you, it's not legalized for you to live off the avails, off of the money that you make. You can't operate brothels, just a few things, which make it really difficult, and it forces sex work underground, just like in the States, that's FOSTA, which I'm sure you probably have gone over in class. I think, Alicia, maybe not so much. No, okay. Well, yeah, it's
not yet.
Oh, it's coming up. It's coming. I don't want to do any spoilers here, but it's anti-human trafficking laws, which I think you were really briefly touching on when I was jumping onto this call. But these anti-trafficking laws jumble up sex work along with exploited persons, specifically those who are being trafficked. And again, there is a difference between sex work and trafficking. Sex work, we are choosing to do this type of work. It's our livelihood. And I mean, to put it simply, when you're trafficked, there's no consent there. And you're being exploited. That, at the point, it's exploitation. So it's dangerous for these lawmakers to make decisions like this for us, again, and also without consulting sex workers as well, which is another topic. But it's really dangerous because, as I said earlier, it really forces our work underground. And when you're not given anywhere to, say, market yourself, or how are you supposed to find clients or in business. It just makes it really, really difficult to operate and to survive, even simply put. So it makes it really, really increasingly difficult for sex workers to thrive. Similar to that, there's a new bill that's in its first reading in Canada. So basically, for a bill to become law, it has to go through 3 different readings, and it has to go through different processes for the Senate to review and consult with people. Like, is this something that we really want to do? And it's basically the human equivalent of sesapasta. So again, another anti-human trafficking bill, which again is the same kind of thing. It jumbles us all up into one category, which isn't fair, and makes it really difficult for us to survive. So there's also something rather new as well. The SISEA, I want to call it SISEA, so Stop Internet Sex Exploitation Act. And that was introduced in the USA in December of 2020, so pretty recent. So I don't think it's official yet. And that is also a little bit tricky. And that bill was to kind of counteract underage porn from, getting uploaded onto, say, like Pornhub or like ManyVids or any of those free online porn sites. And I think what they're trying to do is trying to catch or take down videos that they deem is child porn within 24 hours, which sounds very ambitious, and I'm not sure how they would get the resources to do that, but that's something that's still being speculated on, and I'm trying to keep up with that too, because that would be really interesting to see them really regulate that, because I don't know how. Personally, I just don't know how they're going to be able to do that. So that, and then also I think it's worth noting as well, Section 230, which I think you might also go in class, but I think that's to do with speech, like freedom of speech on the internet, and how that's being regulated, and that can be damaging again to sex workers too, in terms of like the content that we can display online. Which I'm also following. So I'm not super knowledgeable on that, but it's also worth noting as well. So, I guess the last part here too, because I want to leave some room for questions, and we have 25 minutes left in class. But there was a question around here in terms of sex work organizing and unions. So the question was, are there any organized labor movements in the sex work field or any unionization efforts? What hurdles may they face that are unique to the profession? So, there are. I'm happy to say there's a lot of organizing and unions as well when it comes to sex work. So I would say like the first sex work union that was formed was probably back in 96 with the Lusty Lady. You may or may not have heard of it. Maybe some of you might be too young for that. But it's it's an old peep show venue that was in both Seattle and San Francisco, which was really fascinating. And the workers fought for the right to have a union, to form a union, and then they were later formed into a workers' collective, which I thought was really fascinating. So, but I mean, that was some odd years ago now, but there have been a lot of organizing efforts within the sex work community, and not just here in America, but also on a global scale as well. So I can definitely list out a few. Here in Canada, we have the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform, which is an incredible resource, and it's about 25 sex worker groups that fight a lot of different causes or help to educate people on sex work. And they've recently, that Bill C-36 that I told you about earlier, that's exclusive to Canada, they've just launched a charter challenge just a couple months ago actually on that, because they're deeming that as unconstitutional. So they're doing work like that, which I think is fantastic, because that law has been in place forever and hasn't challenged since. So I thought that was really fascinating. There's also Soldiers of Pole, which is LA based, and that's more to do with strip clubs and strippers. So if you didn't know, most of the time strippers are seen as independent contractors. So we are not eligible for benefits or vacation pay or the standard pay and whatnot, like things like that. And Soldiers of Pole helps to, I think they're trying to form a union around getting employee status in strip clubs, and there are pros and cons to that on both sides. Not everyone wants to be an employee. A lot of strippers want to remain independent contractors due to their flexibility of the work that they do. They don't want to be. I mean, there's so many reasons that we can go into about why they don't want to do that, but there's also a lot of pros on that side as well. Like I said, having benefits, rights to better standard working conditions and stuff like that. Basic human rights, to be honest. So, I mean, that's my own opinion. But there is a lot of, we're not consistent on that as like a whole community. So that one there is based in LA. We also have the Adult Performers Artists Guild, which is mainly for porn performers, cam girls, anyone that's online, clip creators, things like that, to help create better working conditions in the porn industry specifically. So I thought that was really fascinating. That's just something brand new I learned about a few weeks ago. The United Sex Workers, that one there is based in the UK, and they actually won an employment tribunal similar to what LA is fighting for too. So strippers going from independent contracting to being employees. So that's something that they're doing over there on that side of the world. There's also the Berlin Strippers Collective, Scarlet Alliance, Australian Sex Workers Association, Red Light United in Amsterdam. Like, there are a lot of organizations, and these are just unions, but there are tons and tons and tons of sex worker led and operated organizations all across the world. And I find it fascinating. I think it's great. And a lot of them have similar missions in terms of, fighting for equality, fighting to achieve better working conditions, holding, say, clubs or agencies up to higher standards, the appeal of benefits. Like, there's lots and lots and lots of stuff there. So I think there's a lot of efforts to be made within sex work, and I think there's a lot of progress and a lot of buzz around it as well. So yeah. I actually forgot to mention a couple questions here, so I'll just read them out now, and I think they're kind of similar. They're on my other laptop. The subject of financial domination has seemed to come into public view recently thanks to a few viral online magazines, articles, and short documentaries, of course. Is there a point where financial domination can go too far? How would consent be navigated so as to be enjoyable for both parties but still maintain a level of financial safety? And there is another question here as well that's also related to kink. So I think I can answer both of these questions in a similar fashion. So the other question was, how are more extreme forms of BDSM work that involve pain play or stripping someone of their autonomy kept both safe and enjoyable? So yeah, these are really, really great questions. Thank you, whoever sent those questions in. I think it's awesome. I think for this question, how I would answer it, there's a few things here. So again, going back to what I said about boundaries, knowing what those boundaries are. Again, if there's any kind of safe word or any kind of word or statement that you can say to be like, okay, it's getting really close. Just so that to give that other person a heads up, like give your service provider heads up. But also know that you're playing a role. And a lot of the times in sex work, we are role playing. And we have different personas and different aliases in the club, also outside the club. I think it's really important to know what role you are playing as a client, but also what role we are also providing as the provider. So I feel a lot of the times we are role playing to a fantasy or for a certain situation to be played out, especially in these specific kinks. So I think it's really, really good to note that. And this might sound cliche or cheesy, but also it's kind of about the connection too. And I think that there is actually a lot of care that goes into these kind of kinks and these kind of fetishes. And I think that is what sets apart, say, new people in sex work, and also like separates it out from seasoned professionals. Because, of course, financial domination, of course, is a big buzz around there. Oh my gosh, this person's going to drain my wallet and going to drain my bank account and all this stuff. It sounds really cool and like edgy and stuff. But I think there has to be some kind of degree of care. And once you establish that connection with your client or whoever your client base is, I think there is a certain responsibility that you should take. At least personally, for me, that's how I treat my clients. Not everyone will be the same, but this is a topic that I've spoken with other dominatrixes as well. Not specifically to financial domination, but also with BDSM and kink too, because there is definitely an area where you can go too far. There's always a risk where you can cross the line. So just know that, but also really work on like building that connection with whoever it is that you're engaging with. So yeah, I guess with that, like, are there any other additional questions? I've kind of left like an extra 10-15 minutes or so for that. I see lots of note taking and smiles. I think
Okay, I have a question, because I find it interesting about the independent contractors, because I honestly didn't know that that you were talking about. So I just wanted to make a comment on that, because that's really interesting. So like, how does it go about if it were to become employee based in certain like clubs and stuff? Would it be almost like a hair salon where like you would pay to be a part of it, or like you pay some of your commission to the owner, or like how would that work, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm not sure, because that's not the way it's run here in Vancouver, Canada. But how about I paint it this way? So independent contracting is just like freelancing, and say employee status is just you working at a regular like 9-to-5 job. So and I'll give you more context here too. So with independent contracting, I'm already keeping track of all the money that I'm making, and I can write off certain things and whatnot. And then when you switch over to employee status, you're going to be given, I don't know what the equivalent of it's called in American context, but you'd get like a T4 at the end of the year to do your taxes. So you'd be taxed on that type of work. I mean, you are. I mean, usually you're supposed to do your taxes, but also claim some of that money too. So it would definitely shift, and that's why a lot of people are not for going to an employee status, because that would also create barriers. But there's also, I mean, on the flip side, because people are fighting for employee status, it's because these parameters are already in place. You telling me I have to be at the club between this time and this time is already like, you're already setting my shift. If you have to sell certain things, or you have to do things that are specific to that job when you're there, like you're already doing things that are specific to a job that's not contracting anymore. So I can definitely see both sides of that argument, and there actually is a case here in Canada that one of my friends is fighting right now too, to try to get employee status, because of all the tremendous cuts that certain clubs can take depending on the owners. Like, she was getting cuts for drinks that she's never sold, drinks that she's never consumed before, larger like pay cuts as well too, because like, I mean, I'll use an example for my own work too. With the strip clubs, you have to be employed by an agency, but you're not employed, but you get your work, you get booked through the agency, as you would say if you were an actor or something. But they take cuts from that. There's a booking fee for that. There's another fee for doing VIP. Even if I don't feel like selling anything that day, I still get that docked. So I can definitely see both sides of the argument. I think there's pros and cons to both, but it just depends on where you land or how you operate your business. Because basically, it is a business. It literally is. So, great question.
So then that kind of goes into another question. Are you having to basically do a cut for the agency and the and the club that you're being agent out to? I don't know how to say that, but that's another great question, because I don't know.
Yeah,
I find that more interesting.
it is fascinating. For this specifically, at least here in Vancouver, it's just the agency. So I think and I don't know exactly how the agencies work, but I think they have partnerships with certain clubs, because they're exactly. Some strip clubs are not represented by the agency and they are just independent. But for the ones that are operating under an agency, it just goes through the agency, so there's no additional cut to the club or anything like that. The only additional fee that I can think of is the fees that you pay the DJ, or in some cases, like whoever is emceeing the night, you pay a cut from each lap dance. So lap dance is a X amount of price, and you pay a small fee to them at the end of the night or per dance. So they take a bit of a cut on that too. Yeah, good questions.
Thanks so much for coming. It was a very interesting conversation to have, and I'm definitely listening to your podcast.
Oh.
I'm so excited for it.
Yay. Oh, I also forgot there was a question here that I didn't actually address. How can I start sugaring? That's a great question as well. So, I mean, the way that I started sugaring was through Seeking Arrangement, and no, this is not sponsored by Seeking Arrangement or any of those sites. But again, it's if you want to think about it as like Tinder or Bumble, you're signing up for like a dating app, and you get you can browse from certain profiles, and then each profile will have like their alias, their bio, how much money they make, which may or may not be real, and what they're looking for. So it's the similar kind of way. So that's how I personally got started. And then once I was a bit more seasoned, because I did that for about 3 years, I think. Sometimes I freelanced at like hotel bars or airports. Strike up a conversation at the bar while waiting for your flight. So yeah, those are just certain ways that you can start. But if you ever wanted to get started, feel free to message me. But I would just say do your research before doing that, because again, I've made a lot of mistakes when I first started, and we don't have enough time for all of that. But again, just not screening properly, not getting money up front, me getting scammed at the end, not getting money at the end when they say they're gonna get money, it sucks, and it happens, especially to a lot of I would say newer sex workers. So I see that Dylan raised his hand first, and then Janae. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. I will address your question afterwards. Dylan, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I just also wanted to reiterate what Emily said. I really appreciate you coming in and giving a really fascinating and underheard perspective. I was thinking about some of my favorite movies or TV shows, and things that depict sex work, things like The Sopranos or Boogie Nights, and it's not a particularly positive depiction. And I was just wondering, what are some common negative stereotypes about sex work that you see depicted in modern media, and are there any movies or TV shows, etc., that you would recommend that depicted in a fairer or more positive way?
Yeah, good question. I think I really, really, really briefly touched on it in the beginning, but yes, these negative stereotypes, they're always negative. It's the same approach every single time. It's some drugged up stripper, someone that can't get a job. Oh, who hurt you? And clients trying to save us, and things like that. Or in Hustlers, they were all bad people, or things like that. Those are really stereotypical, negative images that it's just so old. It's such an old way of looking at things, and it just shocks me that it's 2021 and we're still on that narrative. no one's thought to challenge this yet. Like, why can't we look at this as like, you know, we actually enjoy what we do? I don't know. So that was really like, yeah, like those, they're just tired, right? And everyone's gonna have opinions on TV shows. Everyone's gonna have an opinion. I've heard praise from certain areas. I've heard, you know, well, they didn't do this part right. I mean, one thing that they did do well in Hustlers, I would say, is like the camaraderie, like behind the scenes in the dressing room. I think they did a really great job with that. And they actually did consult with a really famous stripper, Jack the Stripper. She's awesome. But I personally liked P-Valley on Stars. I thought that was entertaining. But and I will go into this with my opinions, saying that this is entertainment. This is made for TV. But again, like, we wanted to try to show more accurate depictions. But I liked that show personally. I thought it was cool. But then some of it goes into those stereotypical things like, oh, this person has a baby and she's a single mom, and they went into really stereotypical Black stereotypes as well, which was really possibly, and I can't assume this, but it might have been more specific to that geographic region in the South, in like Mississippi, which was where that show took place. I also really liked season 1 of The Girlfriend Experience. I thought that was really cool to show, like, and I don't do any full service work anymore, but I thought some of the conversations that the main character had with some of her clients were really real. And again, diminishing stereotypes about what kind of clients see people and why they're seeing escorts and sugar babies. A lot of them just want a connection. They just want someone to talk to. A lot of them are really lonely, or they're going on a business trip and they need someone there. A lot of it honestly is talking. And a little, at least my personal experience was that like a small portion of it was sex at the end, but a lot of it's talking, talking and like just being a companion in that capacity. So, great question. We're talking about self-care in class. How do you practice self-care, and have you experienced burnout? Well, I will preface this by saying you should all listen to Alicia's episode on self-care. It's such a popular episode in season 3. Like, amazing. It was an hour and a half of different types of self-care methods. Oh gosh, it was excellent. Tons of great feedback in that, by the way. And how do I practice self-care and have experienced burnout? Yes and yes. I definitely need to exercise self-care more. For me, I really need to, like, how I practice self-care is disconnecting. And I do that by going for massage, going for acupuncture. Doing exercise really helps me a lot as well. Really getting those endorphins going. That helps me a lot. And just getting away from my laptop or my phone, because a lot of the work that I do right now digitally is on my laptop, on my phone. I'm already working my full-time job, doing all this stuff. I just want to get away from the screen, take a break. Burnout, yes. Honestly, before the pandemic, I was juggling like 4 different jobs. I was like a pole dance instructor, I was a stripper, I was doing my content creation, I was working a full-time office job and travel, and then I was working at a hotel part-time too, like all the things. So I experienced burnout every month, and I had this thing like, well, I'm just gonna work a lot and then just go on vacation every month. And I did that, but that's not exactly super feasible, at least not anymore. You can't even travel anymore. So I had to definitely kind of switch gears and shift my perspective on that. And honestly, I will say the pandemic has been great for me and has caused me to really self-reflect on what it is I'm prioritizing, how I'm prioritizing my time, where I want to spend my time, and just get outdoors a bit more. I live in British Columbia, and it's so beautiful. It's the most beautiful province in Canada. If you haven't visited, borders opening up soon, hopefully. Take a nice visit up here. But yeah, getting outdoors, getting fresh air, and just doing things for myself rather than just feeling I always need to be on and working all the time was a big game changer for me. So yeah. There's a few more minutes in class. Is there any last minute questions? And of course, if you don't get to your question, feel free to just message me on Instagram or email me. I'd be happy to go over any of your questions and answer them if they're respectful. So
yes, and if they're not, let me know. I'm really glad that Janae asked that question on self-care, because that was the question that I was going to ask you, because I knew that, and on the episode of your podcast, when I came on and talked about self-care and mental health and mental wellness, that was one of the things that we talked about, is the similarities between even being a therapist and being a sex worker, and just the connection that you have and how you have to protect yourself, protect yourself, meaning take care of yourself via self-care.
Absolutely. And like going to what I said about like the example with sugar babies and sugar daddies, and it being a lot of talking, and usually it's a lot of the client dumping a lot of stuff on you that sometimes I just don't have the mental capacity to really deal with. But then again, that's part of my job. I signed up for that. So taking on other people's stuff can be really, really tiring. And also for us, being a provider can also be seen as a form of therapy. And I really do think it is a form of therapy for sure. So thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot to mention that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other last minute questions? I know we have just jam-packed a lot into today. That's the thing with our summer classes. In a shorter version, it's even harder, but we still have a few weeks of content, of material, course material, that we can't get to in the summer, just because it is a shorter time frame. So classes are often, every single class is jam-packed like this, whether we have a speaker or not. So no other questions, comments for Steph? Follow her social media, listen to her podcast.
Yes.
It's very great. And we'll have to do, maybe in season 4, we'll have to do Mental Health Matters part 2 or something.
Definitely, because there was already still so much that we had to go over. So.
Oh my gosh, I know. We just didn't have enough time to get to everything.
But thank you again for inviting me today to speak. It was so lovely. Thank you.
We're honored to have you.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for all the questions. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Steph.
Bye. So that was my talk at Florida State University. Don't forget, it's new episodes every single Sunday, wherever you get your podcast. And it is Stripped by Sia on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. I'm very, very active there now. If you want to get at my personal Instagram, it is Sia Steph. And we'll catch everyone in for another episode next Sunday. Bye. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Dabern.